everyone and welcome to Extreme Graphics Tech. My name is Angelo and well, as you know, like a week ago, a controversy started because Todd Howard or Bethesda announced they were partnership with AMD for their upcoming game Starfield. And this raised many alarms because for some reason, it may be coincidence or not, and they haven't denied, which is the worst part of all, is that since many sponsored games that has shipped by AMD, they have not included the DLSS technology. It's very good when they announce the partnership because we know it's going to include FSR, but however, FSR for many, in me included, is not the best upscaling technology. FSR will serve a bigger amount of people. However, I always believe that the user should have the choice, especially because when you implement FSR or DLSS, you already have 90% of the job done for whatever other technology you want to implement. This includes Intel XeSS. It means that 90% of the job is the same for whatever of the three technologies you want to implement. So, because we're talking here not about a small indie game, but a big AAA that is made by Bethesda, and as a big company like Microsoft, there is no reason to not include DLSS or Intel XeSS. Of course, this has not been confirmed, but many people, me included, fear the worst because this is what's been happening so far. However, this brought a debate to the table, which is people, defending the fact that FSR can be used by more people, which is true. However, also brought the debate that the FSR and DLSS are not that different, which I digress. And I don't think that's true. I think DLSS is the superior technology. However, because I don't like to just point to things and say it's superior because it's superior, I wanted to bring my in-depth analysis of all these two technologies, Intel AMD FSR and NVIDIA DLSS, and we are going to compare it with native resolution. But for this, we're going to be using the game in movement. And the reason for that is because when you compare just a static image and pictures, both technologies seem exactly the same. But it's when you start moving around that things change a lot. So in this comparison, I want to bring the two technologies together with native resolution using 1440p with the technologies using the balance preset for FSR or DLSS, and removing where is possible any sharpening to try to mimic the image as pure as possible and see which of the two is better. But this is not about saying one is bad or not, it's just to understand how much or not it's one technology or the other. So let's see the comparisons and then come to the conclusions. Okay, so the first game we're going to be testing right now is Cyberpunk 2077. As you can see, we are going to have always native at first, DLSS in the middle, and FSR as third. I am going to be zooming out and zooming in as we move. I'm going to be moving around the images, just looking for any problems. I think this is a better approach because we are going to see actual moving images, so we can see any disocclusion or anything sort of problem with these games. And I have to say that the start of this is just unbelievably good. I can't see any real difference or problems between FSR and DLSS, but especially against the native resolution. You can see that they are resolving quite good, quite very well. The frame may not be the exact same, so there could be some discrepancy there, but in general, the quality of the reconstruction is very good. As you can see here, we can see some of the errors we can get with FSR. In this case, as you can see, it's not as complete the reconstruction here in this area against DLSS or even against native. And I will say that even DLSS seems to be resolving a little bit better than native, but even so, I don't think it's anything major. There is a little bit more shimmering here, but I think in general nobody will be displeased with the results of FSR. So this is a very good start from my point of view for the DLSS technology. This is obviously running on overdrive and so on, but I don't think that's important. In here you can see that once again we have these little details made the machine, which is like this checkerboard pattern, and you can discern that in all three technologies, even though they are 1440p reconstructing for a little bit over 720p. So as you can see here, all three are quite good. Going on, I think one of the only issues or a couple of issues you're going to find, I'm going to point them to you. So let's go. For example, this area, I can see any disocclusion issues here. Probably, okay, so here is where I will say it comes, like you can see here we have this like barbed wire happening. You can see here it shows here, but still not showing very well on FSR, and that's one of the let's say weakness of FSR is little details, like small details. Also, I'm going to show you this area, and you're going to check here in this area where the palm trees are. This is a little bit more, let's say, pixelated, but also it's going to shimmer a lot more than any. It's less stable. Look, you can see it's a lot less stable in this whole area. You know, when it comes to those lightning details and so on. You can see how much is shimmery, but in general, I'll say it's not a bad result for FSR, all things considered. So I think this is a very good and strong start for the two technologies, considering how different or how similar just they are to native. Okay, and so once again, we are now using a first-person game to test FSR and DLSS, and in this case, it's the game Dying Light 2. And as you can see here, the actual image quality is quite good, even on those far details and everything. It looks quite good on all three. Obviously, native is supposed to be the best, but I would argue that sometimes even DLSS looks better in some cases. So there is not much different. However, pay close attention to trees, because they tend, from my point of view, to ghost a little bit more on FSR, which is only one of the few issues I have seen here. But in this game, the games run very well, especially here. As you can see that it's more ghosted around this area on FSR than it is obviously on native and in DLSS. Don't pay attention, because obviously there is a lot of smoke going on and it's affecting, but on those areas you see where this here is a lot more affected that is on DLSS. But you know, we're nitpicking something, just trying to find what errors could be. This thing is quite great because it shows all three working in perfect tandem, no problem whatsoever. And look at this tree here. Look at this tree. I think it's more resolved on DLSS than it is on native, but it's almost, or I can see any big difference between FSR and DLSS, especially at a normal distance. So I think that looks amazingly good for this game. This area here, we can see some difference. Not very big ones, but I'm going to show you the difference. As you can see here, this water tower here is not completely resolved when we're talking native resolution, but it's much better resolved when we're talking about DLSS. It's also better resolved on FSR, but not better than DLSS. In this case, DLSS is better, but you can also see details here that are not resolved here in the native, like this rope around here. You see it's resolved in FSR and DLSS, but not even native. So I will say DLSS overall look better in this case, but FSR is not very far away. It's looking quite good, I will say. So yeah, that's another very good example of good rescaling. So there is a well, here I'll say more of the same. Look at that. Even the further away details are very well resolved on both, so no issues whatsoever. This has not very small fast movement, but it's okay. Here you see the flag and everything. I can really find any problem whatsoever or anything that big of a difference to make FSR look like garbage or anything like that. FSR is doing very good work here. We'll still tend to say DLSS looks a bit tiny bit better, but FSR is great, honestly. Now, okay, here is in this area. You can see, yeah. So you can see here that you're going to see more shimmering in this area for FSR than you're going to see for DLSS and obviously native. There is a lot of shimmer in this area, as you can see here. You see where my mouse is? There is shimmering around here, but there is none in the DLSS and native area. They are running no problem whatsoever. So that's good win there for DLSS, but I don't think it's a big deal. You can see this in the last shot. When we go very close in this far away shot, that honestly I can say there is a big questionable problem for DLSS or FSR, and compared to native they look essentially the same, at least from my point of view. Honestly, there is almost no difference, and we are very zoom in. If we put this in their original, you're not going to see, but if we put it like this, which is full screen, yeah, absolutely no problem. I think this is a great show for FSR. Hey, okay everyone, so now we are going to be testing the game The Last of Us Part 1. So we have all three. They are not in perfect sync. They're going to be in a certain point, but at the moment you can see here. So the first thing I want you to look is we're going to be looking here on the right side and here in the middle where there is like a puddle of water, and you're going to see that the FSR version tends to shimmer a lot more than any of the other two versions. You see there is a lot of shimmering, and that's created because the game also has a grain filter, and obviously this helps to hide some of the problems, but also to show more of others. However, you can see here from my point of view, both technologies look very, very good in this game. However, you're going to see, because this is a third-person game, that is going to have more issues. I will recommend you to pay close attention to the characters here, because they are third person. Every time they disocclude objects and so on, how in the FSR version you're going to be looking like a halo of artifacts that are going to be showing. But if you see at the general quality, they don't differ very much from the native quality. Here in this area you can see that the this fence is much more better resolved in the DLSS than it is in the FSR version, especially when they start to getting close. You see how much of the pixels disappear here, while they still look quite decent in the DLSS and obviously in the native version here, right? Okay, but you see what the disocclusion that is causing this around them, how it's shimmering a lot. There is a little bit of shimmering on DLSS, but not as much. However, you can see here the two technologies and the native look essentially the same from my point of view. It may be that the default DLSS version has a little bit more sharpening for this title. I removed sharpening from everything. However, I will say they mostly look the same. There is not much I can say. If any of you see anything that I haven't seen, like a better part or worse part for any of the two, or even the native one, please let me know in the comments below which one you prefer on each game, or other problems you saw that I didn't see or didn't catch. So let me know in the comments below. I'm going to wait for this to get completely synchronized so I can show you one of the biggest issues I have with the FSR technology. Well, here we have the same issue. As you can see in this area, we have the fence that is not completely stable, and here is much more stable. But well, we have to pick those errors because they are errors at the end of the day. So if you are choosing the best upscaling technology, but the problem here is not selecting which one is the worst of the best, it's just to see the difference so we can understand them. Okay, so you can see here, this is one of the issues. As you can see here, this gets a little bit pixelated, and you can see there is some ghosting over here for this area here. Okay, that's clear as day. But this is where all problems start, when things get a little bit complicated for the algorithm that they are using, and we're going to be showing here how FSR kind of broke in some parts of this. You may say it's not important, but I think at the end of the day everything is important, especially for a third-party game, because they will affect very much the way the game looks. So I'm going to put this in slow motion so we can stop it and see the things. And no, you don't need to see this in a slow motion. You are going to catch those errors even at normal speed, but I do need to oh, I think we went a little bit too far. I was looking at the wrong place. So as you can see here, he's going to start closing this fence, and we are going to be looking at this in a moment. So the first thing we can see, look how garbled this is. Look how garbled this is. This is because it was disoccluded and now it has appeared, and look at the difference in quality between these two. And this is one of the biggest problems, because you are going to be catching this error constantly when it happens. And you can see that the helmet here and how the details look a lot more pixelated in the FSR version. But if that wasn't all, are you seeing how it's happening? Here we have some ghosting, but this is even worse. So, but look at when he starts to close the fence. Look at what happens. Look at these areas here, and look how these tubes here generate all kind of noise on the back. There is some of that noise on DLSS, but it's better resolved. Look at this, and look at this. Look how this is completely pixelated and garbled. Look at the hands. Look at how the fence here is disrupting the image. And believe me, you are going to be seeing this because it's annoying, because it takes a couple of frames for them to disappear. So you are going to be seeing like a shimmering or something happening, and you won't be able to understand why that's happening. Well, it's happening because of FSR. Okay, so the next game we're going to be testing is Returnal. So the first thing we can see here is how the rain kind of disappears in the, it's not resolving correctly on the FSR version, as you can see here, while it's more resolved on the DLSS version clearly. So we can see here, actually this game looks quite good even with FSR, but there are some difference that, you know, they are going to make up quite a big difference in quality. You can see here that this character specifically, you see here how it's cleaner the image, while on the FSR for some reason, well, not for some reason, I know, it's all of these occlusion artifacts that are accumulating and creating this sort of garbled message image, right? That is all these little lost pixels somewhere. So I think it looks messier on the FSR version. This is a very complicated game to upscale because it's mostly dark, big contrast, so this creates a quite complicated scenario for all technology. So as you can see here, there is a lot of particles, a lot of things moving. So this create, even you can see here in the native, there is a lot of pixelization. It's better here, and in some takes FSR can look okay, but FSR doesn't really like this game that much. You can see here how you see all the, it's like sort of pixelated garble, while it's more refined on the DLSS version. It's more pleasing. Well, at least that's what I think. There is also some more shimmering on some of the vegetation if you look at the this one in movement. So you can see here what I'm saying. You see the image is cleaner here. It's more easy to the eyes, while here is it has a lot of more like it's not very well constructed. It's like missing pixel here and there. Here you can see in the reflection that the FSR version is completely broken. I don't know if it's implementation or because it can't resolve, but you can see how bad it is here in the FSR version. It's not able to resolve, while DLSS is much more stable. You see, you can see that in here, look. And you are going to see that everywhere we see there is particle, there is going to be less particle on the FSR version. Here the lines, well, this, you know, I wouldn't say it looks better or worse, but I just think that DLSS is resolving a little bit better, while it looks a little bit more pixelated on the FSR. But I don't think anybody's going to be able to discern the difference just by watching or playing the game. So that's, I will say, it's not a big deal. What is different, well, where you can actually see a difference is in the amount of particles, and you can see this in every single one of these elements. You see there is an amount of particle here, there is much more resolve here, but the one that has less resolve is the FSR version, and you can see it here. Look, every single time, look, there is a lot less on FSR. It's not able to really reconstruct this in a very good way. And now let's focus on these characters here with all their shooting stuff. Look, you can see that is happening here, and when we get close to this, you can see here a lot of ghosting and garbling, this occlusion, while the image has a lot, some of it here is not as much as here. You can see like a trail, and look how much better and clean the DLSS version looks. So you can see here this character, look, and this happens everywhere. You see there is like this ghosting and garble, this occlusion thing. You see, it's like a repeated pattern happening. Well, this doesn't happen here, but it does happen here a little bit. But it's, you see how here is like a trail and how here is repeated. That's because there is ghosting and this occlusion problems happening there that creates this effect. Once again, you can see the amount of particles here is a lot less than in the DLSS version. And once again, we have the rain issue, where the rain, you can see less rain in the FSR version than in the DLSS or native one. Okay, so I'm going to be testing now two examples for Spider-Man, and you can see here the biggest problem is this area in here. You can see how everything that is like very big contrast start to shimmers a lot, and you see that there is not an issue here in this area where there is not so much contrast, but there is here where it's supposed to show reflections, and there is a lot of difference between the white and the blue from the background, which causes a lot to shimmer, and that problem is present everywhere in here, you can see here, and you can see that the fence is more stable on DLSS than it is on FSR. So that's one of the problems I was saying about the FSR being, less stable when it comes to that sort of things and differences. While here, if we get close, you can see that there is not a big difference between native DLSS or FSR, and actually they look quite similar. So that's a good win for all technologies, even though this one here may look a little bit more pixelated if you ask me, but I don't think at a normal distance or resolution is going to matter, but I do think this is quite clear as day, for example. Okay, and finally we are going to be checking at this footage at half the speed, just for so we can see the problems more easily. So you can see that the image is not stable on the FSR version. The DLSS version is much more stable even than the native version if you are looking for the shimmery. So, and here you can see what I'm been talking about. There is a lot, if you look at it and the characters, a lot of these occlusion artifacts happening in the FSR version of this game. And now let's look at this. Look how this start to scramble everything and on the background. Look at what's happening here. The background here have become a blurry and complete pixelated mess. It's not perfect here, but I will say this is more due to depth of field, bokeh, and well, of course, part of the reconstruction, but it's clear that it's much stable here. Look at the trees here and look at the trees here. They seem like they have some pixelization to them, and it's hard to discern exactly what they are because it's hard to even understand. Look how shimmering and unstable the image is in this game. Look at what's happening at the background, look here, and you can see that some of the problems that you can get in the DLSS is because they are actually happening on the Spider-Man native version, and it's due to some effects applied, but the problem is FSR exacerbates and create a bigger problem with the quality, and at least that's from my point of view, as you can see here. Look how unstable this image is here compared to the rest of the images. Well, as you see, I have to say I am surprised myself, because the difference is not as big as I initially thought. There is a clear winner here, and it's DLSS. In no game was FSR better than DLSS, and if you have an NVIDIA card, it's obvious that there is no reason for you to choose FSR over DLSS. However, it's also true that if you know the difference between playing at certain frame rate or not playing at that frame rate is using FSR, the quality that you end up having is not bad at all, especially if it's a first-person game. Because one of the biggest flaws we found about FSR is this occlusion. This occlusion is the biggest problem with FSR, and I don't know if this is something they can fix or not, because this has been known since the beginning. And when this occlusion happens, then you start creating this shimmering. And the problem is, when you're looking at a first-person game, it's not as bad. In Dying Light 2 and Cyberpunk, they actually could quite good, and it's hard to see the difference between the two. You have to look for certain things and smaller details, which is great. But when you have a third-person game where the character is in the middle of the screen, you can constantly see this like halo of shimmering and this occlusion around the character, because obviously the character is constantly moving and occluding something that is behind him. So this creates that the halo around the character becomes a very distracting and annoying. And I know this because I'm playing Jedi Survivor on PC, and oh boy, it's so annoying because I don't have DLSS on there, not officially at least, and then you constantly see this halo and this ghosting around the character that is very distracting. However, as I said, FSR is closer to DLSS than I thought initially. However, DLSS is clearly better, and this we're talking about 1440p. Probably it will be even less if we test a 4K. We will have to test to see how the reconstruction works there, maybe from 1080p. But I think I was using a more reasonable resolution for most people. And I honestly think that, FSR is good and it can be used by a lot of people, even from NVIDIA, using cards before the RTX series like Series 10 and Series 9. We have tested some card here and FSR come to the rescue, and I think it's a great technology, and I really commend AMD for making it open source. That's great, but maybe the reason it's open source is just because they didn't think about including Tensor cores or EA cores, and we will have to wait what happens with FSR 3, which is another reason why many people were angry about this sponsorship with Starfield that may hint to the fact that it's not going to have DLSS. And the reason is we know that Starfield is going to be a very CPU heavy game, so many people maybe with some RTX 4060, 4060 Ti, or with not very heavy, very capable CPUs will be able to take advantage of the fact that DLSS 3 frame generation will improve the frame rate without relying on the CPU. And so not having DLSS means that even this will not be part of the game. Unfortunately, we cannot test FSR 3 at the moment for the reason that AMD has not released this yet, so we don't know if this is going to be open source, if it's going to be available for any type of cards, or is only going to be for the Series 7000, which they mentioned because they have some special cores in there, and we don't know if AMD is going to take advantage of this. So unfortunately, at the moment, I can only test the upscaler. However, as I said, I believe DLSS is the best technology of the two, and by maybe not such a big margin, but there is a margin, and depending on the game there can be quite a difference between being annoying and not being annoying. Of course, as I said, I would prefer obviously to have FSR2 that not have any sort of scaling technology, because always a lot of people can still use all GPUs and benefit from the added clarity that you can get by playing at 1080p with some FSR or 1440p with some FSR. But at the end of the day, I am honestly convinced that the best solution is to include them all and let the user be the judge and use whatever they feel like, not constraining to one solution, especially if the reason of that constraining is because your sponsorship is blocking the third-party solution or other vendor solutions. So I hope this is not the case with Starfield. Really hope that, because I'm being very vocal about this, and I will be the first to accept if I was wrong. Let's see what AMD and Bethesda does. But well, there you go. At the end of the day, the important thing is that we saw how those two technologies behave, and it's for you to take the last word or to take your conclusions. So I hope you like this video. As usual, if you haven't, please please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and as always, see you on the next video.